And unfortunately, there's a lot of companies now that are struggling where they need to adapt their systems to these new capabilities, and they're fighting that. So I would say if you have the advantage of starting that blissful MarTech stack from scratch, or even if, again, you're a little bit more of a mature company and you are looking at how do we evolve it, I would say from the operations level, optimize for openness.
Welcome to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. Think of the show as the motivational poster in your ear. Each episode features lively conversations with technology and marketing leaders about what's changing now and what's coming next. We'll unpack what's working, what leaders are rethinking, and how they're planning for the future. Every guest brings a different story, a different perspective, and a different approach. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with others. Let's jump into the episode.
Welcome to Lessons for Tomorrow. We're excited to have you all here on the show today. I am your guest host, Tim Ahlenius, VP Strategic Initiatives with AmericanEagle.com. I am very excited today to have several guests on the show, and really want to start with Scott Brinker, widely known as the Godfather of MarTech. He's the former VP of Platform Ecosystem at HubSpot, co-founder of Ion, and the voice behind Chief MarTech. He also created the marketing technology landscape and is best-selling author of Hacking Marketing. Scott, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. And joining us as well is Frans Riemersma, a leading MarTech analyst and consultant known for helping brands like HP, Adidas, and Audi get real business value from their tech stacks. He's built one of the largest independent MarTech data warehouses and is focused on making MarTech smarter, simpler, and more effective. Frans, it's great to have you on the show as well.
Thank you so much. I work a lot with Scott, the Godfather, so that makes me partner in crime, I guess.
Wonderful. I love that. I love that. So we're really excited to have you both here on the show today. I'm also joined by two colleagues from AmericanEagle.com. Tony Stehn, you want to give a quick intro?
Sure, Tim. Thanks for having me. Tony Stehn, VP of Sales at AmericanEagle.com. Have been in the digital marketing space for 20 years. I've seen a lot of MarTech over that time. It's changing rapidly, as we all know, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation today.
Wonderful. Then Harley, you want to give a quick intro, your role?
Sure, real quick. Harley, one of the SEO team leads here at AmericanEagle.com, also kind of leading a lot of the AI research and strategy and AI for marketing. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Wonderful. Well, we're really excited because with the gentlemen we have in the room today, we get to dig into some areas about MarTech. And what we always like to start with on Lessons for Tomorrow is really just going a little bit into the past. Where were we at? So where have you seen MarTech evolve over the past decade? Let's just go and limit ourselves a little bit here, because I know we all could go further back. But what's one shift that has actually changed how companies operate, not just how they buy the tools? How has MarTech evolved over the past 10 years, in your opinions?
Well, all right, I'll pick one. I'm sure you have many more too. But I think one of the things that's been really exciting is you go back 10 or 15 years in MarTech, and part of why it was even called MarTech is because it was so isolated in the marketing department. To the credit of actually a lot of marketing departments, in many ways, they were often ahead of a lot of their colleagues in the rest of the organization. Great for getting innovation and, keeping ahead with marketing, but it actually led to a little bit of siloization in the technology between marketing and the rest of the org. And it's actually been great to see over the past 15 years, the rest of the org has actually started to catch up. Obviously things like sales tech, the whole go-to-market tech space. You see more and more of the collaboration between IT teams and marketing teams that 15 years ago was sometimes a hard bridge to cross. So I don't know. I think organizationally, it's a lot more unified.
Yeah, I love that. Frans, your thoughts?
Yeah, I often make a distinction between digital transformation 1.0, 2.0. 1.0 is more like companies using more software. And in 2.0, they become software because they have customer portals and what have you. So oftentimes I congratulate people in the audience with, congratulations, you have a new job in tech.
Yeah.
You thought you were in automotive or banking or pharma, but you're in tech.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference, right?
Yeah, and what happened to me, like 15 years ago, I used PowerPoint, and now I've basically become PowerPoint. So yeah, I know.
Right? Yeah.
And you've trained it now, so it just automatically outputs the slides exactly how you'd like them to, right?
And then I wake up from that dream.
Yes. We all do, unfortunately. Yes. Tony, how have you seen it with the clients that you work with where, and you were in marketing prior to being here at American Eagle as well with different technology, but where have you seen that growth happen over the past 10, 15 years?
I think personally, and from what I hear every day from our clients, is the MarTech industry has just become extremely overwhelming for a lot. Everywhere you turn, there's a new solution for one problem. And quite frankly, it's really easy to make these decisions in silos, and companies are making decisions quickly because everything seems like it's going to be the best solution for the need that you have at that point in time. So let's buy that solution and run with it. And then before you know it, you have one platform on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And it's really hard to figure out how to use them against all things sales-wise, marketing-wise, as well as operationally. So yeah, it's just been a really interesting sort of road to navigate, and it'll be interesting how it shapes up here in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
I think that's very much the fault of whoever those people are who keep coming up with those crazy maps of like thousands. Like if they would just stop that, the whole industry would
Well, but if you think about that map is only a result of the speed to which that software also comes out now because of technology's evolution. And with that, also all the acquisitions that then start to happen. I think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of our clients see is that they start to solve one problem. So they pick the fastest solution that they find. But then they switch platforms somewhere else, and they have to change that platform, or that platform gets acquired by another one and becomes bigger. I think we saw that with the evolution of the CMS platforms into DXPs. So, even when they were a CMS before, right before the 3-letter acronym change and morphing of letters, it was, we're a CMS platform. We do content great. Let's add A/B testing. Let's add personalization. Let's add email marketing inside of your same platform. So it's an all-in-one solution. And then we said, let's be headless. Let's be composable. Well, now let's be composable, but we're all brought together under one umbrella again. It's interesting, that shift. And I think with what users have on the marketing technologist side, they were forced to become a bit more of a technologist in that sense because the technology was so often changing. And in order to actually understand that change, you had to go beyond the standard marketing practices. And that's where I think that unique role kind of came up over the years. Kind of like you mentioned, is like that intersection of technology into the regular activities of a marketer forced that MarTech combination effect.
And now that only seems to be accelerating.
Yes.
Boy, with AI, it's sort of expected, actually, now everyone is a software engineer. You didn't realize you were a software engineer.
Yeah.
But now you are, right?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes we got to worry about how fast people think that they actually are a software engineer with vibe coding. But I'll save that for a different podcast because I could really lose track of our time here today. But Harley, as someone who uses the technologies, and especially with the SEO and AI, as an executor for clients, how do you see it having evolved, and how do you look at seeing, maybe what's the biggest mistake that you've seen happen that had to be corrected because of the, MarTech stacks that have been built out?
Yeah, good question. I think honestly, one of the bigger mistakes that I see is companies kind of either unknowingly overbuying tech or just in intentionally overbuying tech, thinking they're going to use it or that they need to use it, rather than, identifying a particular piece of technology that's going to serve a specific need that they have. And I think a lot of companies honestly are taking advantage of the fact that they can just, we'll add this on and add this on and add this on and add this on. And then you have 35 people that need this tool. Great. And so then you have all this technical debt. And I think honestly, that's from my perspective, that's the biggest piece.
Well, it's really easy to add things on because it all just works so seamlessly together as soon as you open the box.
The thing is, you don't always need it. This is what we see with our stack research. What do outperformers do? And they're very conservative. They really, what we call, reduce to the max. So they make sure they have the minimum required, and that really brings a lot of value. Whereas the rest of the market is basically just on a purchasing spree, and and not always knowing what they want to do with it. So you just clearly said something about CMS, DXP, etc. That's normally for low performers, as we call them. That's the 70% of the market in one industry, for instance, because stacks by industry are very different. So this is what we see. And outperformers are really conservative. Doesn't mean they don't try the latest, greatest.
Yeah.
They just don't operationalize it yet. They play around in a laboratory type of environment. And then once it's mature and they can use it and it's bringing value and it has traction, now we migrate it into the real stack.
What are some of the ways that you've seen companies kind of overcome that hurdle of going from low performer to best performer from a MarTech stack optimization perspective?
Yeah, this is maybe a bit of blasphemy, but it doesn't start with technology. They learn they have to end with technology. So what we see is that the strategic maturity should be slightly higher than process maturity. And that should be slightly higher than your technology maturity. This is what we surveyed across the board. And we saw that outperformers do this very clearly. They have that. This is what we call the digital transformation pattern. And it's very simple. You cannot automate what you haven't standardized, and you cannot standardize what you haven't defined. And very often, if you don't know what an MQL is, then how on earth are you going to make sure who owns it in the process? And how your segments or your buckets look like in a marketing automation platform, for instance. And very often it's just like, okay, we just buy a tool and automatically everything works.
Yeah, that's being accelerated here right now with AI, because AI makes it so easy to automate things. Oh, we can set off this agent to go do this work for us. And then the question becomes like, okay, well, what exactly is the process that we use for this? And you're like, well, I don't know. Joe has this method of how he likes to do it, but, Cindy, and like they realize, actually, we haven't defined how we do this. How can we even teach the agent to automate it for us? So,
yeah. And I love that you start with understanding that process of going forward from what you do as the individual, the human.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can actually train the agent. And it's something that I was just reading the other week, and it's more about the human-led, agent-driven, where we have to have AI be human-led first and foremost, and then your agents can drive that automation, that efficiency, that scalability for you. And with that, I think that's where we see so many, the calls I've been taking about AI solutions, right? And then several clients we're working with right now for AI, optimization inside of their businesses is so much of the process definition that has to happen first. So they're like, oh, let's go get an agent built. And I go, well, what are we solving for? Do you have that defined? Let's map that out. And then I'll tell you where the agent can actually help and the instructions we can give it. But do you know the instructions from Joe over in sales of how he processes that invoice through to then compare it over to the vendor he sends it to then get theirs back, and the whole series of steps that happen? So much of it is in someone's head versus documented. And when you start to ask for processes, I love that you called it out. It's different for each person, even within the same organization. And if you want to bring that automation of an AI tool in, then you have to be able to define it and then stick to what those parameters are, right? I like to call that freedom within guardrails, right? We want the agent to be able to do some level of freedom in certain circumstances. Other agents are very rigid, but either way, they're all being given sets of instructions. They're not having free will to go choose everything on their own.
Scott, we should have warned you. Don't bring up AI in front of Tim, because he can't stop himself. It just goes on.
It's
and on
very
and on.
true.
But I will find a way to relate that back to MarTech and the conversation today. One of the things that Tim did mention, though, is that, it's human-led, AI-driven, or human-driven AI, whatever you said. I don't remember. It's too. You talked for too long and you lost me.
see, this is process.
However,
process.
Definition is not well established here.
One thing that did come to mind was the amount of times that businesses come to us to evaluate their systems, to evaluate their tech stack. And they always come to us thinking that they have a problem with their tech stack and it's not doing this for them. And they thought it was going to do that for them, but it's not. And really, when we look under the hood, they don't really have a MarTech problem. They actually have a problem in the fact that they don't know what their strategy is, or they don't know how to operationalize it. And that becomes the real problem. And so, one of the things that we always encourage our clients to do is one, do your homework and look at real case studies, but think about that solution again, across all facets of your organization. You might have a sales problem, but how is that going to be impactful across operations and across marketing and across IT again? So I just think that oftentimes people always like to point the finger at the technology and not necessarily look in the mirror and say, we actually have a strategy problem. Or
Well, I think when you test your technology, a UAT test or whatever, that's where you find out you didn't scope it well and you don't know what you're solving. So then we blame technology, but it's, and there's a very simple test to find out if you have a strategy or not. Just ask 5 people what the targets are, who your ICP is, and probably if you get 5 different answers, which happens a lot, you're in trouble. Buy more software, we'll solve it.
Yeah. So speaking of that, just buy more software, solve it. If you were working with someone who's starting a business here in 2026, how would you tell them to define and build up what their MarTech stack should be?
I would say follow the money. Who's your customer? How do you make money? Because the revenue you're making today is proven revenue. This is how you do it. And very often we try a new market with new customers. That's a lot of new variables and you don't have data to understand that. So if you start with your current customer base and figure out what you're selling most to them, that's a good starting point. And then the next step is trying to figure out, and I'm not telling you guys anything new, but what are the typical customer journeys? And they're not a gazillion, they're like 3 or 5. And those are broken, most probably. So start there and, fix stuff. And then you can do this with your existing MarTech and maybe some agents. And that will bring.
See, this is why Frans gets the engagements with the board level folks. And meanwhile, I'm down having beers with the marketing ops team. My advice would be, optimize for open systems and open platforms. I mean, one of the things that we just know more than anything is this space is changing. And we can't even begin to imagine what it's going to look like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now. But we know it's almost certainly going to be different than what it is today. And the history of MarTech had a lot of platforms that were really not all that open. I mean, this strategy very explicitly by some of these companies was like, okay, here's how we get lock-in. And, once they come into the Roach Motel, they're never leaving out, and unfortunately, there's a lot of companies now that are struggling where they need to adapt their systems to these new capabilities and they're fighting that. So I would say if you have the advantage of starting that blissful MarTech stack from scratch, or even if again you're a little bit more of a mature company and you are looking at how do we evolve it, I would say from the operations level, optimize for openness.
I love it. Yeah,
I love it, and embrace that MarTech is never done. I mean, we buy sometimes MarTech and think now we're done. Just like in the ERP times, I think with ERP maybe we're done because we control all the variables. It's within your company. But outside, customers, competition change their mind, and MarTech is never done.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the big thing that I love about that is the openness and the opportunity to also start and see where the revenue is at, start and see where your audience is at, and then meet them as you're going forward. I think to your point about getting locked in, Scott, that's where I saw a lot of over the years, people get locked into a tool and then they just put a tool on top of it. And that's where we suddenly went from maybe you had 5, 6 different tools in your MarTech stack to, what was the average? 70, 60, 70, somewhere in that range at some points for depending on the size of business and everything.
Business,
industry, et cetera.
All that. Yeah.
But I've walked into that before and it's like, wow, what are you using that tool for? Oh, you know what? I think we stopped using that a year ago, but we just left the tracker on the site and we should probably remove that. Or to Tony's point earlier too, we need to solve this one problem and that tool did it and we were able to get it implemented. So that's what we use. Well, do you use the other 80% of it? Do you, I always talk to people about like Excel. How much of Excel do you understand? Me, 10%. An accountant, 90% most likely, maybe. Copilot's there now, so maybe, we should learn more. But overall, it's definitely something where it's an opportunity to look at it and we do a lot of audits with our clients too let's look at your technology stack. If you were going to go through an audit with someone on their MarTech stack, where do you start and how do you guide them through that process of determining the value of a MarTech tool in their tool belt or toolbox to where they might want to either consolidate or consider something different?
I think this speaks right to your analysis of start with the use cases.
Yes. Yeah, this is my daily operations. We check out what tools do you have, and we can immediately say, where your outperformers in your industry drive value based on revenue per employee ratios of competitors. What are they doing? Do you have similar features? How mature are you compared to them? And then from there, you can take it and say, okay, actually, we have a lot of this and too little of that. I like what you said, about the features, because it looks to us, at least, and now with AI. Oh, I wasn't allowed to say AI.
Oh, no, it's okay. I won't talk.
But that's on steroids, because now we learn we actually don't need a tool, and tools were there maybe for the lock-in, but with AI and the research we do, we find that certain features are super critical and really drive the revenue home, whereas the rest of the features don't matter. Actually switch them off. This is what I often do in software selections. I tell software vendors, can you switch it off? It's distracting. And they are very happy with the latest, greatest, roadmap features, etc. But it's not helping.
There's a metaphor you've used a few times that I really appreciate, because I actually do find this metric of utilization to be a bit of a red herring. Like the focus really needs to be on like use case and delivered value. But at one point in time, you had used the metaphor of like, okay, well, you have a piano, you wrote a song. Did you make sure you used every key on the piano in that song? Like, no, I didn't touch every key. Then like, well, clearly you're underutilizing the piano there. Yeah. So Beethoven, what an idiot.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Harley, from what you do with clients and just understanding the opportunity of where AI has been taking things, maybe can you talk a little bit about how you've helped clients understand that shift of where AI is now such a daily impact for a lot of what they're doing in their marketing efforts, and how we have to help structure things from an SEO perspective and the intersection of the two?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely two major buckets. The first would be, how are we utilizing AI to supercharge marketing efforts? I think there's a lot of stuff that, is still done the old way, simply because people are either unsure of where to go, or how to start, or how to innovate on a particular process. But then the other half is, how are you positioning your brand? How are you positioning your marketing materials? How are you positioning your strategy to ensure that you're visible for, the LLM interactions that are becoming so prevalent in today's world? And, that's the biggest piece is, we're taking, and your comment about, vibe coding and being a vibe coding engineer made me laugh, Tim, because that's like me. I'm like crazy dude in a lab that software engineer says, oh, it's going to take us 4 months to build this thing. And it's going to take us 89 hours and QA and testing. And then I come back 6 hours later. I'm like, hey, I built it. It's hosted on a free hosting platform. Check it out. See how it works. See if you like it. And it's simply because we're using these tools to kind of stretch the boundaries of what we thought were capable. Now, obviously, I think there's opportunity for checks and balances. What's built with AI and vibe coded, we already know that it's unreliable and it's buggy and there's security issues and whatnot. So it should be vetted by somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. But I think, we can utilize AI to really stretch what we thought was possible in marketing efforts and marketing strategy. And then, the other side, that's kind of it feels like a black box right now, because nobody really knows what's going to happen with how people interact with LLMs. Is it going to continue to be you got to log into ChatGPT? Is it going to go agentic, where you say something and a mini robot inside your phone goes and does whatever it is? Is it going to be, we have no idea how all of that is really going to turn out. So we can only kind of, make judgments on what we see in front of us today, because, as Scott's point, everything's moving so fast, by the end of the year, it could be completely different.
Yeah. I grew up in the 80s. So, when you start talking about the robots or whatnot, I can't help but think of like Terminator and the Matrix. So,
the Jetsons.
But, actually something you said there about the vibe coding stuff, I really resonates deeply with me, because I think sometimes the skeptics to vibe coding are pitting it against professional software engineering development. And that's not actually where vibe coding plays a role. Vibe coding is fantastic for all the little things that you would have never bothered asking an engineer to do because they either would have laughed you out of the room like, I'm not going to waste time on that. But actually for individuals, for small teams, this ability to create things that solve their direct, immediate problems. Oh my goodness, what an incredible creative gift. But also what you mentioned, when you are going to have engineers, professional engineers build something, it's a pretty significant investment. And historically in software, one of the challenges has always been we tell the professional software engineers what we want. They spend a lot of time and money and build it. And then we see it and we're like, oh, yeah, no. Now that I see that, I think I actually want something a little bit different, which is, again, very natural. And that is actually one of the superpowers that vibe coding is unleashing, because you're able to say, well, okay, actually, let me do the prototyping to figure out what it is I really want and how I want it to work. And then, it's something I can turn over to like a professional engineer to be like, okay, this is exactly what we're looking for. I've user tested it. I've worked out, my flow, the process. That is a huge unlock.
Yeah. And what we see is that, like I said earlier, MarTech is never done. We have this notion that MarTech should be done, and this is the stack now for the next 10, 20 years or whatever it is. Whereas it works the other way around. Like Scott just mentioned, vibe coding is so important for experimentation. So we sometimes make a distinction between have your processes around MarTech around hacking, packing, and stacking. So you first hack, and once it works, and don't bother IT, they're too expensive, they're too important to make sure the stack is scaling and performing, and that's the stack phase. And in the middle, you have marketing ops people doing the packing, which means cleaning up the code, going back to the minimum amount of data integrations and data fields and what have you. So this is how you do it. And actually, they're pretty different mindsets. In my own team, I have growth hackers. If I ask them to clean up their desk, they go bananas. That's not that's packing.
Yeah.
And I have some people that can really package everything really well. And asking them for creative new ideas, vibe coding, oh, no way. So if you do this, then you can scale and then you keep it really clean. So on both extremes, you have like experimentation, exploitation. And what we often say is like, the first part is more laboratory. It's finding out what the future revenue is, whereas the stack is current revenue, and that's exploitation. So,
yeah, I love both your points here, Scott and Frans, where vibe coding does have a place. The challenge we're seeing is that vibe coding is ready for production, and they want costs of projects to reflect that. And, oh, well, we had someone who vibe coded it over the weekend, and so now we want to use that as our production ready, and having that understanding go there. And that's the gap that we're challenged with and having to educate, where AI is being promoted that way. Oh, you can go build your own apps. You can go do. Absolutely, there's a place for that. And Scott, you kind of reference it inside of your team to start with that, right? What can you do to help with the day-to-day things where it's in a safe place, let's call it, right? Freedom within guardrails, like I mentioned earlier. But then as you go through that, you can hand it off, but you still have a need for that person who understands development at that level. I think the same goes for marketing, though. When I look at the tools in the MarTech stack, email marketing, marketing automation, social media platform tools, where they're starting to embed AI inside of them, the customer experience that they're trying to be able to produce from that, it's a great concept, but I feel like all these different AI solutions that are coming into each of the different tools is fragmenting that. And so how do you guys see that in the space? You're looking through and seeing all these tools, working with clients, talking through that. Are you seeing the same thing where a customer experience starts to become more fragmented in a way? And I think you had a blog post about this back last year with value engineering. How do you understand the value of where AI comes into the MarTech stack and where you really need to not have that AI really be there?
I would say follow the money. That's the value engineering. So again, there are a couple of customer journeys that are really important. You reverse engineer, and it's almost embarrassing or creepy or scary how simple your stack becomes. I'm not saying you cancel everything and you reduce everything, but you get a really good feel for this is essential and this is what needs to be up and running all the time. If something goes wrong here, somebody should wake up at night and be, fixing it. And then many other things are just experiments and not really important. Like Scott said earlier, use case driven. So within your journeys, you have certain use cases, cover those. And if you do that, you become really proficient. And then suddenly AI has that purpose to solve that specific thing. It can be content, video creation on the fly. It can be email creation, whatever. So that is, if you keep really an eye on the money, on the revenue streams, then it becomes a lot simpler.
I mean, the example you gave here of every single MarTech product in your stack is adding AI features. I mean, we all have the same problem, whether you're on the MarTech vendor side or everyone's like, you just need to use AI. Actually, we really don't care what it is. Just AI-ify the hell out of it, could we? But it's a real challenge because legitimately the competitive relationship between all of these different products in the MarTech stack, they've been relatively stable for a period of time, and I think pretty much everyone recognizes that stability, that structure it's shaking. Yeah. Everyone wants to be the center of the universe now around AI, but it is a little bit of that sort of game theory thing here where because everyone wants to be that, and you've got, 15,000 some odd, products all vying for that. Yeah, it's probably more chaotic in the stack now than it's ever been.
Absolutely. And with that chaos, where do you see the AI customer experience going from where OpenAI had gone down that shopping route inside of ChatGPT to then suddenly abandoning it and different solutions, like they dropped Sora with their video creation and everything. So when you see AI change at this pace, how do you have conversations with people about where to trust how the longevity of some of this approach for a MarTech solution that you're choosing is? Or is it just that now you may have used to sign a deal for maybe a 3-year license agreement, and now you maybe need to consider just 1 year because of the speed of change that's now happening?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm just going to steal all of your material because, you've got this down. Again, like the use cases are the things that you need to make sure you're serving well. But then when you start looking at a lot of these new AI capabilities, this is where Frans's laboratory and factory, dual stack model, I think makes a ton of sense. Is the problem with things like, take the ChatGPT shopping thing. You didn't know that it was going to fail when it first announced, and I won't name brands, but there were some pretty major brands who were freaking the hell out of oh my God, I guess we have to be in this. We're going to just be a distribution center for, OpenAI. It didn't turn out that way, but it could have. And so I think for companies to be in a mode where they develop these muscles to be able to do experimentation in the laboratory without having to turn the whole ship, to just be able to keep a little bit of those side bets of okay, there's just going to be a lot of experiments. 9 out of 10 of them probably aren't going to go anywhere. But if we're not in the game, when that 1 out of the 10 hits the jackpot, we're going to lose out to one of our competitors. And I know this is a really stressful thing to have to just be in that mode, but I think that's the reality.
I think it's so clear that even the big AI vendors don't know where it's going. And these are great examples you just gave. They don't know. If you look in Google Sheets or in PDFs, I have to summarize everything. Really, is that all you can offer? I mean, and they are the smart guys, so I have great respect for them. But if they come up with that, go okay, I think we haven't not figured out AI yet. And here are 2 routes, 2 directions. Maybe there will be a point that we all have figured it out. And then, it's a bit more clear, or it's a constant disruption. So we have to learn to live with, uncertainty and to work with uncertainty. And I think that's also something in a recent report that we published. Managing uncertainty is not what we want. I want MarTech, and it should be clear for all once and forever. Good luck.
I love that you talk about uncertainty there, because I think that's one of the biggest challenges is where people need to adapt in their skills today as modern marketers, marketing technologists, right? Even just end users. You're constantly having to shift and adapt to that uncertainty now. Even as a parent, I got 4 boys, and, in school, they're learning certain things, and AI is one of those debated topics of how much do you let students use it versus not? And, they're going to be exposed even deeper to it when they're in the workforce. I don't even want to imagine what that is right now, because that's too far out. But with that, it's how do you encourage someone, or what would you encourage someone, let's say, coming out of college, first career job, how should they learn more about being able to handle the uncertainty, especially tying it back into the MarTech space? Because if they're going into marketing with a business and they're coming into a marketing team, what's the best things that you can give them advice for right now of how you would approach it?
Well, I think for people who lean into this, it's never been a better time to be in marketing. I mean, this ability to create things at a speed and a scale and a set of capabilities that honestly most marketers and most marketing teams didn't even have access to. And the amazing thing about this AI, I mean, all these things that keep coming at you, yeah, it's a lot to learn. But there's this kind of meta trick that you see folks who really lean into this do, which is like, well, I have the AI teach me, it sets up lessons plans, and I can try this, and I have it ask me questions, and I ask it questions. And it's honestly not that expensive. We were having this discussion at one of the MarTech Next events in Boston, that honestly, in college, not even wait until you get out of college. I mean, it's $20 a month to be able to experiment with some of the most powerful tools in like the history of humanity. If you lean into this and learn and, start to experiment with this, your ability to come to an employer when you graduate and be like, okay, yep, no, I can do this. Here's how I've done these skills. We've set it up this way. Let me show you the apps that I've created, the agents I've done. Here's how I'm coordinating them. What's the challenge you're having of, how are you managing the data control? All right, this is how I can show you how we get this set up. I mean, for folks who want to lean into this, it's an incredible time. If you don't lean in, on the other hand, good luck.
I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. I mean, I think it's expedited our ability to learn at a pace faster than we could ever imagine. I think it's also really heightened our level of curiosity, and people are asking more questions than they've ever asked before, not just around marketing and technology, but around just the most random things in the world, because they know they're going to get an answer. The challenge that I think is going to impact a lot of these students or, recent grads are going to be distinguishing what's actually true. And I feel like, a lot of that also plays into this business world where companies come to us thinking that AI is going to solve all of their problems. And quite frankly, if the data or the inputs are wrong, or their data is dirty, it's actually going to amplify the problem. And so I totally, agree with everything that you said, Scott, in terms of how, it's going to impact this younger generation, how it already has, and it's going to really amplify a lot of things. But I do also sense that we got to be careful. I mean, I have 2 daughters, 8 and 9 years old, and every time I show them something, their first reaction is, "Dad, is that AI?" It's like, I don't know. I actually don't know if it's AI. So it's going to really create some interesting times.
Yeah, I think we're, with software as a service, we come out of an era a little bit of if then else, deterministic, it's clear. And, you create an automation flow and it always works. Now, and this is almost, I have a linguistic background, becomes interesting because agents, come from the word agency, which is autonomous, which, suggests we are removing humans from the loop. Well, nothing less is true. There's more human in the loop than ever before. And here's the thing that we tell students, critical thinking. What you read, is that true? And that is very hard because that's not only a mind thing, it's also your gut. Like, something is off here. what is it telling? And you have to try this. And like Scott said, play with it, test it, and then have fun with it. And you go like, this is right, this is wrong, this is working, this is not working. And only that way you can overcome uncertainty, because uncertainty is not like, I have clarity forever and ever. No, it's like, if uncertainty shows up, which is very often almost daily basis, then I can handle and deal with it, And that's, I think, the critical thinking is so important. So often we make a joke, AI makes us more human.
I like that. And I couldn't agree more about having the human in the loop. It's a common conversation point I have when we are talking about AI services, is that there is a requirement that we have for anything that you're using AI for, there's a human in the loop in the process flow, because you have to validate, you have to QA that and make sure that it is accurate and truthful. And you mentioned truth, and I want to kind of hop over to what is a commonly accepted truth in MarTech that you guys think is actually wrong.
Oh, very simple.
Oh, you'll be so much happier when the entire landscape consolidates.
Has it ever consolidated over the years since you started that diagram?
Actually, it is constantly consolidating. The challenge is, as it consolidates on one end, it continues to diversify
and expand on
the other. My favorite examples are when, when was it? I think it was back when Salesforce acquired ExactTarget, which had acquired Pardot. And people are like, finally consolidation. And I'm like, you do realize that the founder of Pardot took the money he got from that and now just launched 10 new companies in the MarTech space. So actually, not so much. But, one of the things, this is a be careful what you wish for, because there were folks, I'm not going to name specific platforms here, but there were folks who had moved to a direction of standardizing them. Well, let's just get it all from this vendor. And they did. And then that vendor came around at renewal time and they're like, okay, here's your price increase. It's going to be 15%. Oh, yeah. Next year it's going to be another 20%. You're like, we're stuck.
Yeah.
So again, I think there's a healthy balance, between consolidation, but also, again, goes back to the openness and keeping some optionality. As a buyer, there's as much risk to consolidation, as there is benefit.
Yeah, I think the biggest myth is that there is a best tool. There's only a best fit for the situation of your customer journey or your use case, but there's never a best tool. And I think the whole market, the analyst market, is geared towards that. This is the best tool. And by the way, that is true. They're doing a great job pointing out this is the Ferrari in this particular segment of MarTech. But we all know the metaphor where people say at certain points in implementation, yeah, we bought a Ferrari, but actually a Ford was good enough for now because we just learned how to ride a bike.
Yeah, I love that. That's especially the ride a bike part.
Yeah,
but now they're all motorized for us. So we got to watch out for that autonomy as well.
Yeah, it's the AI equivalent.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Harley, any thoughts from your perspective?
I think, one of the things that we've kind of alluded to a little bit that is interesting, and it kind of plays on the whole vibe coding situation. But, I think one of the things that is coming for and is here, honestly, for the marketing technology space in general is, kind of like this concept of almost like micro tooling, where if you buy a piece of software and you're operating that software and maybe you don't like the way it functions, or maybe the software provider, nickel and dime you on 3 specific features that you weren't quite sure that you did or didn't need. And now with AI, you have the ability to go and build a portion of that software yourself. And depending on how capable that software is, you can then hook it into whatever software it is that you bought. And so, I literally just did this maybe 3 weeks ago. We were evaluating a software to help us optimize YouTube channels. And they wanted, you could only get this mass optimization feature for an additional enterprise level cost. And it was going to, 4x the annual cost of this tool for us. And so I said, okay, hey, Claude, I want to be able to do this. Help me figure out how to do this. And it was like, oh yeah, YouTube API can totally do that. Let's build something. And within 6 hours, I had completely dismantled this company's ability to upsell us on something because I had built the tool, and within a week I had it operational and had used it for a client. And so now we saved money internally because we built the tool for ourselves, and it's a micro tool. It's very small. It does one thing, but it saves us a whole boatload of money. And so I think, for people like multiple people in this room have mentioned, if you lean in and you really explore and push the boundaries of what you thought was capable, you can simplify. You could simplify and diversify your tech stack all at the same time, because you can make something very simple and then also, kill your reliance on a particular vendor for a solution that they, thought that they were going to build. And so I love that part of where this technology is going, because it offers freedom for people who just want to go and do, and one, build cool stuff, but two, want to, get things done efficiently and for a great cost.
I think we've just found patient zero of the SaaS apocalypse.
Yes, I agree.
But, actually, I think you're right on with that. And if there's a longer arc of how I think the MarTech industry is changing, is, that whole MarTech landscape for 15 years, it was mostly about application level software.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think what we're starting to see is people don't want to build everything themselves from the ground up. It'll be crazy to do that. But the things that they want to buy start to look a lot more like infrastructure. Yeah. I want to have that system, that manages my data in a consistent and governed way. I want to have a set of services. I'm not going to build my own SMTP email delivery engine. But then how I orchestrate that infrastructure into applications that are very specific to, my customers, to my internal workflows, that I want to create and manage myself. And we're not fully there yet. In fact, for a lot of companies, we're probably barely just beginning that journey. But that sort of seems to be directionally where it's headed. MarTech is going to be an infrastructure industry.
Yeah. Do you see that as more, there's going to be more custom AI built like what Harley just talked about, or the adoption of an AI tool that comes in, or a MarTech tool, I shouldn't just specify AI, but a MarTech tool that comes in to solve those problems? Or is it a combination of both?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination, but, Frans and I have been writing a lot about this over the past couple of years is, for all that crazy MarTech landscape, we kept referring to it for years as the long tail, because it is a long tail distribution of a few very, very large companies, thousands of very small ones, but that is completely dwarfed by the amount of custom built apps and now agents that are, by orders of magnitude. You've even got the case now where you ask Claude to do things. Behind the scenes, it will write software, execute for you, give you the result. You never even knew that an application was being written and run. That is happening millions of times now without. So anyways, this, we started to call this the hypertail. And so I think if you look at the total amount of code executing in businesses, somewhat today, and certainly over these next few years, the amount of custom software is actually going to far outweigh the amount of commercial software. And it's not because the commercial software is going away. It's just because there's becoming so much more net software available to us.
Yeah, this is what we often describe as composability. And some people said, oh, you see that as a trend or a strategy? No, it's the fabric of technology. If you go to a website and look in the HTML source code, it's a mishmash of plugins and stuff you put in there. That was always the case. And if you look at, we spoke about consolidation, the opposite is what we saw happening a lot. Sure, there was but it was outnumbered by MarTech atomization. More smaller tools. And now this is why AI agents are thriving, because it's exactly tapping into the hypertail. So it's a combination. You need to marry the two. And roughly what we think is happening is that SaaS with the deterministic layer is more the infrastructure, whereas AI on top is more the engagement, the value driver, more operating between the company layer and the customer.
I love the atomization of it, because I think that's exactly the appropriate approach to think about how you can bring AI or an agent into the conversation of, when you're trying to solve a problem, do I need a full third-party software solution, or do I need an agent that's going to be customized to my business and what I need. And that's a lot of times where we have had custom integrations for clients in the past, custom development, whatever it may be. It's because we're looking for making sure that you're not locked into what the platform allows you to do as a business, but what you need to do as a business. And I think AI has just accelerated that now for us. And in the same sense for marketers, because the marketing tools and the AI power that you have there, the ability to create segments with a phrase now, an audience segment, versus the restricted filters that were available inside of the tool before, give you a bit more freedom to maybe catch a few more potential people to market to, because the rule set before limited them out, versus now it's expanded it with the AI thought process.
No, you see this ton now with so many of these platforms opening up MCP servers, you know, and so they, I mean, again, like, we won't name names, but for most of these major MarTech platforms, boy, trying to get an answer to a question, that was a bit of a treasure hunt of how do I find the right reporting? How do I get the right, you know, choices in the menus? And like, I'll just file a ticket and have an analyst get to it in a few weeks. It wasn't even worth waiting for that, you know, and they hook these things up now to like Claude or ChatGPT. And they're just like, listen, I'm kind of curious. What have I been missing, you know, in segment? And like Claude connects, pulls in the data, analyzes it, gives you the answer. You're like, oh, and I have a follow-up question for that. It is like phenomenal. Now, maybe there's a little red light blinking somewhere of like, were you supposed to have access to all that data? Which is kind of this next stage, you know, where we're seeing folks like, okay, I keep thinking like the genie, you know, from Aladdin, like, you know, great cosmic powers, itty bitty living space. We need a little bit of itty bitty living space governance structure in some of this. But with that caveat, man, this ability for anyone to just be able to get answers to their questions out of these platforms. What an incredible productivity unlock.
Yes. Oh, yeah. If anything, in my mind, the MarTech space has now had the acceleration of what more you can do in your day because of all of these additions from AI and from the enhancement of the technology over time. We could talk about this forever. I know that, but we can't spend forever here in the studio together. So I want to wrap us up with and I'm not even going to do the 3 to 5 year because that's just way too far out. In the next year to 2 years, where do you see the biggest impact in the MarTech stack for organizations? And with that, if you'd prefer to select an industry that you want to say that impact is going to have the most impact, go ahead and name that industry and talk a little bit about that.
I think I will say if we weren't letting AI suck all the oxygen in the room, the most exciting thing that would be happening in MarTech right now is what's happening at the data layer. You know, we are finally getting to a place where we're seeing universal data layers, you know, emerge. They started at the enterprise level. They are steadily coming down, you know, into the mid-market. But whether it's like Snowflake or Databricks or Google BigQuery, this ability where we're, you know, pretty much every application inside an organization is being pushed to, hey, you have to make your data available to the cloud data warehouse, lakehouse. Oh, and not only that, we want any given application on our stack to be able to pull and read data from that layer as well, too. For as long as we've been in MarTech, you know, data integration has been the number one technical challenge. And it was always about this sort of like point-to-point integration, or maybe we could try and get a platform here to somewhat pull these things together. You know, now that we get a universal data layer, that barrier is starting to go away. There's other challenges that follow that. We don't have time for that. But I think that is going to be the most exciting development here over the next year or two, is that universal data layer is going to continue to grow and mature. And at the end of the day, that's really what powers and enables so much for AI.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to next level personalization. So, because what you see with LLMs, it's language driven, which is basically on the content level. And we haven't seen that before. It feels to me like we have switched on sound in silent movies. You know, with SaaS, if then else, you can figure out what people are trying to do. But now suddenly you can listen to what they're saying and typing in and going back and forth. And you can create videos and whatever on the fly. We scratching the surface with AI so far. It's really productivity improvement, you know, doing things less bad. But the real thing is, how can we really surprise and delight the customers with completely new experiences? I think we are the limitation, not AI, and we have to figure that out. We'll figure that out in the next year. So I can't wait. Can we fast forward?
Yeah. Well, let's fast forward. We'll see what comes out next week with any of the updates from the speed at which we can do. Harley, any final thoughts from you on just that future?
Man, I think from a marketing perspective, it's just moving so lightning fast that it's really hard to say. But all that I can say is that companies that don't have a mind for change, to embrace change, companies that aren't willing to step outside their comfort zone are really going to struggle over the next year.
Tony, your final thoughts?
I would second what Frans said about personalization. I think it's going to be incredible what we're going to be able to do, and how easy it is for us to live our lives with the level of personalization that's going to come into it. But I also think, in speaking about marketing technology stacks as a whole, I do think over the next 1 to 2, 3 to 4 years that it's gonna really be a game of consolidation. I think AI is going to allow us to consolidate our MarTech stacks. And, although we've been really focused over the last decade on stacking more tools, more automation, more this, more that, it's going to make us more sophisticated. It's now going to be, how can we consolidate things? How can we do better with integration? And how can we make sort of our lives a little bit simpler? So that's my prediction.
I love it. The simpler, the more data, and the unification of data, I think, too, connecting it, because so much of data has been siloed for far too long. And I think that's where we're going to be definitely the next year or two, seeing a great consolidation. But also, I love the thought of just more utilization of, I used to call it dark data back in the day. Everyone wanted to track everything, but then they just left it in a closet and never used it. I think the exposure from AI is allowing people to do more with that data, and it's more accessible as well. But I completely agree with the earlier thoughts too. I think governance is going to have a bigger play. I think we've kind of seen that initial hype aspect of AI, and now kind of the businesses who were dabbling in it, trying different things out, the laboratory aspect of it. I think that's now where we're starting to see those experiments really say, okay, we can go this far with it for this information, but here's some governance that we need to put in place because of data privacy, and in a good way. We don't want all that data just out there and accessible. And I love the thought of the earlier comments too, as I'm wrapping this all up, of lean in. I think that's where, to really succeed, especially at the pace of change that is occurring right now in MarTech, lean into learning, lean into trying different things. Lean outside of your comfort zone. If you're just in social, look and see what email's doing. They all start to intersect over time. And by broadening that awareness for yourself, it just makes you a better utility player when it comes into where you may come out of college, where you may come out of a career change, where it might just be where you want to be able to do more in your day. So I love the thought of just lean into it and really understand what this opportunity brings for you today. Scott, Frans, thank you so much for being on the show today. Harley and Tony as well. We really appreciate the time. Would love to continue the conversation. I know online you guys are, posting and continuing to have these conversations, and you have the wonderful diagrams and research and everything that comes out, which I now need an AI summary agent to do for me at times, but we'll talk about that on a future episode. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for listening to the Lessons for Tomorrow podcast. Find out more about AmericanEagle.com services and today's topic in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share this episode with others. This podcast is brought to you by AmericanEagle.com Studios, and we'll catch you in the next lesson.